Turn up the dive, feel the vibe, get ready to ignite. Untold stories in the airways, flying through the night. Experience voices, tales so bold. Streaming live, the truth unfolds. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild member ride. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can't hide. Aliens in the attic, UFOs in the sky. Cryptids lurking, oh my, oh my. Ghosts in the hallway, whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Become a VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories, they're talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the group. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild member ride. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the Untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries convene.
Good morning, monsters, and welcome to Monsters on the Edge on the Untold Radio Network. I am your host, Barnaby Jones, and we got some great guests here today with have a lot of personal experiences with Bigfoot, and it's going to be a great show. But first, guys, coming up in just a couple weeks, we are going to be in Baxter, Minnesota. Myself and the Caps team, we are going to be out there April 12th through the 14th. I have a brand new presentation myself and Ma will be doing all about our adventures together as Ma and son doing Bigfooting and paranormal and all that fun stuff. So guys, you don't want to miss this one. It's a brand new presentation. It's going to be a lot of fun. It is going to be Saturday at 10:30 in the morning, I believe, is when that one's going to be. And then I also present on Sunday at 3 on cryptids. So a big 3-day event, all kinds of other stuff going on. Make sure if you're in Minnesota, come out and check it out. And May 18th, we are going to be at the Hodag Heritage Festival in Rhinelander, Wisconsin. We are also doing a Bigfoot informational educational hike at 7 p.m. that same day. You can get tickets on our website at wisconsincaps.com. And of course, the Marinette Menominee Bigfoot and Paranormal Convention, May 31st and June 1st in Marinette, Wisconsin. Myself and Rich Daniels will be doing a Bigfoot educational informational hike that day on the Hayden Adventure property, which is a 80-acre property just outside of Menominee, Michigan, that has a lot of Bigfoot activity going back for over 10 years, all documented in the Bigfoot is Hidden book, available on Amazon.com. So all that very cool, fun stuff coming up. If you want to show your support for all things here on the Untold Radio Network, here's how.
Hey, Untold Radio Network fans. Want exclusive perks and to support our channel? Introducing our YouTube membership program with 3 amazing levels. Get loyalty badges that level up to different cryptids the longer you're a supporter. How cool is that? You'll also get access to custom Bigfoot emojis and priority in chat. Upgrade to Backstage Pass for exclusive wallpapers, photos, status updates, discounted books, and merchandise. Go all in with the producer level for everything mentioned plus member shoutouts. Ready for an enhanced experience? Join now, pick your membership level, and let's make this journey even more exciting together.
All right, guys. My guest today is not just one, but 2. We have Tim and Eric Vogel with us today. They have been interested in Bigfoot since 1976, when something with big feet went through their backyard in western Massachusetts. Tim is a ranger, and Eric is a retired city employee and guide for their educational adventure and outdoor recreation business. They did backpacking and climbing, kayaking, and all kinds of interesting stuff. Some international guiding in Ecuador and South America, sea to summit expeditions for 30 days each. The Vogel brothers have been doing Bigfoot research and investigation since 2013 and have some great stories about personal encounters and experiences with Bigfoot. They've both had visual or Class A sightings and various other potential Bigfoot experiences. They've also cast several Bigfoot tracks over the years. And now, without any further ado, please welcome our guests, Tim and Eric Vogel. Hey guys, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
Very good, very good. How is the ice storm treating you guys?
We're getting through it. I think we're coming winners here.
Good. I said before we went on air that the frozen empire of Ghostbusters has reached these guys, and we gotta hope for the best.
Yeah, well,
Awesome. So, I mean, you guys have done a lot of expeditions and exploring. And tell us, what got you guys into all this stuff? All over the Ecuador and South America and everywhere.
From the beginning.
well, I guess we'll take it back to
Right.
1976.
Yeah, definitely.
That's when it all started for us.
Right.
We ended up going to a movie called, I believe it was Sasquatch: Legend of Bigfoot, and it was in 76. A couple months later, it's December, and there's snow on the ground, and you get up and you're going outside to play, and next thing you know, there's these huge feet tracks in your yard. And a couple hours later, there's police and reporters and all these other people showing up in your yard saying, what's going on? We had a large property that had a large field next to it that went to a railroad track and a state park. And
Right.
it was a large property. So, they just came in and kind of set up camp, and there was a report that there was Bigfoot tracks or potential Bigfoot tracks. And they came for good ways from Agawam into West Springfield, back into, across the river, some railroad tracks and into Robinson State Park where they ended. And that was it, as far as we knew, we had all these things, things. We had all these, the police,
They
the
sent in some
investigators.
investigators.
Yeah, they had investigators that came in, and we're doing stuff like we do today, but back then in the 70s. And for us, that was kind of a new thing because first off, Bigfoot was a West Coast thing. We out here, our biggest thing was a black bear. Moose down in Massachusetts really wasn't a thing in the 70s. Really wasn't. So it was just this odd new thing that showed up on the TV and said, "Hey, Bigfoot," and here we are, and probably Boy Scout age, it's 14, and we're camping, and we're like, "What? This thing's out here, and we're camping." So of course we go out and check this thing out. So turns out it was a hoax later on. Yeah.
Yeah. A few years later, it was found out to be a hoax. But normally you don't start looking for Bigfoot that way, you know.
Yeah,
But that's the way it ended up. That's what still got us into
Yeah.
it because hey, that thing was in our
That's
yard,
it.
you know. That's all.
Yeah, so 14, 12, 13, 14, you're, the coolest kids in the neighborhood. You got Bigfoot in your yard and,
Mhm.
and all these other people, searchers and whatnot. So it was just a really cool experience. And even after we found out it was a hoax, who cares? At that point, at that age, we had Bigfoot in our yard. We didn't even know what a hoax was, let alone Bigfoot, So it just didn't matter. Yeah, but that was the
Yeah.
seed, I guess, that got it all going. And then it kind of goes fast forward into 2013, where we went on a canoe trip. We
Right,
own this
yeah.
business, Tekoa Mountain Outdoors. We were guides since then, 2005. We retired it basically because of COVID. We worked with a lot of school programs, a lot of groups like that. We'd have 80 10th graders backpacking in the
Oh,
White
yeah.
Mountains
Yep.
or paddling, in New York or something like that. So it was nothing for us to be out in New York. So this was a canoe trip. It was 2013. We were paddling all season, and it was Boy Scout groups. All season is all summer.
Yeah.
And we had paddled all season up in the Adirondacks in this area called, the Racket River, St. Regis area. There's a lot of different paddle and portages where you can connect over 100 miles, and we would do many trips that were over 100 miles. They'd collect a 50-mile reward, and then they got to go back. So you got 100 miles out of it anyway, or this, that, or the other thing. So, we did a lot of trips like that. And we come
did.
across one area that we really enjoyed, and we'd always bypass it because it was always difficult to get to. And it was usually a dry slog up this creek that had dried up. High water, you'd make it because you could paddle up in high water, but
Yeah.
it seems like we never had the high water to get up there. So it was a muddy hike up this probably 3/4 of a mile, like an outlet to a stream or to a pond. And this pond in New York has one designated campsite on it. When you look at a map in this area, it has all these state campsites, and you're not allowed to camp on any other property other than a designated campsite.
Right.
It's a leave no trace thing. It's a management issue. It maintains numbers of populations in areas, how much usage they want in an area, things like that. So there's a lot of reasons for it.
And they manage it very well.
Oh yeah,
They're not afraid. They're not afraid to tell you to move on.
Yeah, we were New York State guides as well with this business, so we could take people in, and they would pay you. So you had to have a guide certificate, and so we were New York State guides, and we had to pass all the rules, and we got stopped one evening with a group, and we had one person over the limit, so we ended up having to maneuver our group in a way that it was working for the ranger out in the middle of nowhere, for one person.
Yeah.
And so they were sticklers about it, and that was our bad. We shouldn't have had that one person over. It just happened, but it did. So anyways, we dealt with it, and that was the extent of it. So we get out there, and I guess we're talking about that because it shows you the stringent or the strict policies the rangers have out there.
Mhm.
If this is a designated site for one canoe lake, then they will watch and know that we've come through because they sit up on these remote spots. That's how we got caught.
Oh yeah.
And it's just a remote spot, and they'll binocular, and okay, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, too many. And so they'll see an overabundance of people going into this area, and they'll check it out. Well, we got into this area, no one's there, and it's one campsite, and it's really rocky and kind of windy getting in there. And we set up camp, and then it was time to go fish.
It was.
Time to go fish for eating. So it was dinner.
We paddled about, I don't know, we're about half mile across the pond, and it was the only site there. We got in there, we set it up like you said, and then we said, okay, well, let's go fishing. We'll go see if we can catch dinner. So we're headed in between this an island, this little island, and the shore, where it was kind of calm. And as we're going through, the fishing was incredible. The bass 3-4 pound bass. It was almost every cast.
Yeah.
So while he's paddling, I'm fishing. I'm having a good old time.
It's like a fish story now. Not even a fish story.
It was, because we had all we wanted. It was crazy.
Fly fishing too.
And we saw this opening to a stream. So we started to go into this stream, and there's a dam up in front of us, and it has a bunch of overhanging branches. He's trying to paddle in, and I said, well, wait a minute here. I said, I don't know if I want to go up there just yet.
It's a beaver dam.
Yeah, it's a beaver dam. So I said, okay, I'll back up, you spin around, and you go in. So he does. We get the whole thing spun around, and he cast up and over.
So
And go ahead. And then after that, that's when everything broke loose.
yeah, basically that's where all hell broke loose. So we paddled up, cast into this bow-shaped beaver dam, and it kind of tapers back to a stream, and it's a narrow stream at that. And this beaver dam creates it's a beaver dam, but maybe for a Bigfoot, it's a fish trap. So I'm casting up into this thing, and I catch a fish, and this thing's popping out of the water, and it's jumping across, and all of a sudden 2 trees start shaking like they were in a snow globe, just crazy, crazy, crazy shaking out of the whole forest. These 2 trees start shaking.
Yeah, about 50 yards to our left.
Yeah, it wasn't too far away from shoreline where we were, and then that's where this is happening. Now the set up the forest, it's a boreal forest, so it's really thick pine trees. It's just really dense. You can't see through it. It's like a New England forest, but this is pine, and it's really dark. It's really thick, and you couldn't see much past the shoreline. So we never saw what happened. But these 2 trees are shaking like crazy, and sticks and stuff's falling off, and then all of a sudden this roaring and screaming, all wrapped up in one kind of thing, starts roaring, and that's when it really caught our attention, because the whole tree thing was very surreal. I did not, we're looking at this thing, and all of a sudden it starts roaring. We don't know what's going on, or even how to describe what possibly could make it happen like this, but this is going on right in front of us.
It was nothing that I've ever heard before.
Yeah,
It was that different.
It was a loud roaring, screaming. To be honest, as this is going on, the trees never stopped shaking. No. The roaring didn't stop. It may have wavered in tone and pitch and growls but I don't think it ever really actually was quiet. Once it started, it just never stopped. And this went on for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. I didn't have a watch. We didn't have a phone. We were fishing for dinner,
right?
Literally. And we had a 5-weight fly rod with a couple of, I think we had Mickey fins on them that we had tied here at the house, little flies. And that's what we were fishing with. And they were nailing it. And all of a sudden, it sounded like this thing was getting more aggressive. So we're backing out through this braided stream, like getting back into the lake. And and it sounded like it was gonna, I don't know, it just got really louder. And as far away now as we are, 50 yards, 75 yards maybe, you can feel this in the chest. I mean, you could feel the whole body. You could feel this thing yelling. You could feel the yelling coming at you, like. And of course, I didn't know that's what was happening. All I know is that I could hear it and I could feel something, like I was at a Ted Nugent concert. That's what it sounded like, just crazy loud.
It was,
and it just reverberated with the noise it was mirroring the noise that was coming from the trees that were shaking violently, and there were sticks and things coming out of the trees potentially like that, because you could see splashes and whatnot around, contained within the beaver pond. Didn't really nothing was throwing sticks or rocks at us, because by this time
we know of,
we were scared enough to where we had paddled pretty far out of the pond now, and we're into the lake, and this is still going on. And then I guess basically it just stopped.
Yeah, it's almost like when we got like 3/4 of the way across the pond or across the lake.
Backing out, yeah.
is when it stopped. And it's no noise, no nothing. Trees stopped shaking. It was just dead quiet. So we just kind of sat there and we're just listening to see see if we can hear anything.
Yeah. Figured maybe it was a mountain lion and a bear, fighting or something, or maybe a couple of them jumped one, or it was that weird noise. It was just that loud and just crazy. That violent, and that's what it sounded like. It was just a roaring and a screaming kind of, and the shaking was very surreal, very scary, I don't know. It was just, holy crap.
Yeah.
And then,
so then we're, as we're on the other side, taking a break, trying to figure all this out, we start paddling up the lake because we have to go to our campsite.
Along the shoreline.
And our campsite is on the same side, about a quarter mile from where this all took place.
Yeah.
On the same, we were like, oh no, you got to be kidding me.
There's no going to the car. There's no ride home. There's nothing. You're just parking it there for the night, and you just experience this terrifying,
it was crazy,
unexplainable, whatever the heck it was. I don't know. And now you got to spend the night. So
yeah, we didn't talk about it very much.
No.
We were just waiting for the sun to pop up.
Yeah, we were listening. We're really, we got a good fire going, and we were listening for tracks or something coming through the woods. Potentially coming out. We were like on watch, waiting for the footsteps to come through.
Before we knew anything about, we really weren't thinking Bigfoot.
No, we didn't equate this to Bigfoot at all.
Nothing at all.
Like I said earlier, this was in my mind, because I didn't know what to think. We thought maybe it was a bear and a mountain lion, literally, or a couple of each, fighting and having a brawl or something.
We just couldn't explain the trees later on.
Yeah, the trees were the weird stuff. I mean, that was weird. So it kind of ended uneventful. We did have something come to our camp that night.
We did.
I think it was a deer, but I did yell over to Eric, letting him know something was coming through, because I could hear it. We sleep pretty far apart. He's in a hammock and I'm in a tent, and he snores. So that's just my ground rules.
Hey,
Oh. So that's it.
Hammock's the way to go anyways.
Yeah, well, when you're trying to ultralight backpack and stuff, you usually share a tent. You can't do that. No. He gets a hammock and off he goes. So, but this thing came through. It was probably a deer, but it came through the campsite. So I was yelling at him, and we got up probably sunrise. As soon as we could get in the water, we were packed and in the water and out of there. As fast as we could get, we got. And then when we got to where we were putting, our takeout where the car and the parking lot would be, there was a ranger we talked to, and he kind of just brushed it off, because we said, hey, if you're going up near that first campsite, watch out. There's something's going to eat you up there, because it's loud, and it was fighting, and I don't know what was going on, but there's something up there. Okay.
Whether or not he's ever heard or seen anything, he wasn't letting happen,
Yeah, it never. So that was 2013, and so we came back from that experience, still really not knowing what we went through, and then I guess we got into Facebook, and that's when it really started to make sense. We met a few people that had. We were sharing similar stories, or I was reading stories that were very similar to mine. And I'm like, whoa, hey, what the heck? Really? Nah, that's like make-believe crap, and that's the only thing that it could, I can tell you what it wasn't, but I can't tell you, for sure that thing was a Bigfoot in New York, but nothing that I know throws sticks and
it wasn't something
like
that I would want to run into. Out of all the years that we've been out there and we've camped out there.
Oh yeah. I mean,
we've done this route for years.
Yeah.
And that was just great, because we planned it to make sure it was empty. All the kids were in school
working,
everybody was gone working, whatever. We basically had it to ourselves.
Odds are we'd have it to ourselves.
and I think we got in the way of them fishing and us fishing at the same time.
Yeah, really. When we
Really
sit
do.
here Monday morning quarterback this whole thing, and now it's a few years. We were there fishing. Why were they there? This is not a forest. There's no trail. There was no trails out there. This is wilderness stuff. There's game trails at best. And this is a really thick, rugged forest.
It's not something that a human wants to bushwhack.
Not on purpose.
Really.
Not on purpose. Nope. Not without like a machete or a 3/4 axe and all that good stuff to get you through it because it's rugged. And so this wasn't like a setup. Somebody set us up. This actually happened. This was, to me, I believe, a real deal. Whether or not it was Bigfoot, I can't say yay or nay, but I could tell you it wasn't a moose. It was, it wasn't a lot of things that I can explain.
I think the pond, I think there could have been two.
Yeah.
And
Two
that's
trees
why
were
those
shaking.
two trees were shaking like they were. And we believe that they were fishing the pond at the same time we caught that fish.
Yeah.
And, if you've ever seen casts of a Bigfoot's hand, they're enormous.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they could have been using that as two big mitts trying to push these things over to the dam, and the other one was going to sit there and scoop them out.
Well, envision a narrow creek, two large Bigfoot come walking through this creek, pushing fish back towards this beaver dam, which is now a fish trap. That's why I do believe they were fishing.
And they're mitts, and those things are huge.
Yeah, all they do is walk through with a strainer. Maybe they got a couple pine boughs in their hands to act as an actual strainer and grab fish. Reduce.
It's a theory, but that's what we think happened.
Basic fish trap methods at that level could work. And so we were there fishing. We believe they tolerated us and stay hidden all the way up until the point where I caught that fish and it broke water. And then all hell broke loose.
It really did.
Yeah.
It just broke loose.
And they said, "No, dude, we had enough. You're in our fishing hole. Get down. Get going."
Yeah,
and we did. And we simply did. It was that loud and that aggressive to where we
really
took it serious.
Whatever it was, did not want us there. We did go back the following year.
Yeah, we did.
and we got in there and we bushwhacked into where those two trees were.
Yeah.
And they were about
8 to 10 inches around.
Yeah.
Almost 8 feet across.
At least.
Apart from each other.
You could put one hand on one, but there's no way you couldn't touch the other. And you couldn't shake it the way this thing was being shaken.
This was like they were in a snow globe. Just envision that. That's how these things were shaken. And the only two in the forest. Just very
it just wasn't a bear,
it
just wasn't. We thought of that a million times.
8 inches around. You go get 10 of your best friends and go find an 8-inch tree and see how much you're gonna shake it. That's what was happening with this.
It was really
very surreal to see that happen.
But we did go back to investigate it to see if we could see anything.
Yeah. Because by this time we've got a year under our belt. We've now gone into we learned about Facebook and we've met a few people now. Similar stories. So we kind of said, well, dude, this might have been it. So we went up and did our own investigations. And that's kind of where we've gotten started with the investigation portion of it. Then we got into the Squatchachusetts group and things like that, and going out to Ohio and meeting and greeting with a
couple
bunch
of conferences.
That's basically how we got into it.
And you listen to the stories; they're pretty much, you can almost relate to most of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. All right, guys, we have to take a really quick break here for station identification on the Untold Radio Network, and we'll be right back.
Show your support for the Untold Radio Network family of shows and join in on the conversation by using super stickers and super chats on YouTube. Got a question you want answered? Ask it live via a super chat and get real-time responses from our shows, knowledgeable hosts, and guests. Help keep the Untold Radio Network shows running strong. We need your support. Send your super chats and stickers now.
All right, guys, we are live here on the Untold Radio Network on Monsters on the Edge, and we're talking to Tim and Eric Vogel. And you guys have amazing story. I mean, this is, out there. I can't imagine that, a lot of times when you're out Bigfooting and doing the stuff that we do, you have maybe a mile or so before you get back to your car, and you guys are out there in the middle of nowhere. I mean, I gotta hand it to you. That was, I mean, I guess maybe not knowing exactly what it was or what you thought it was kind of maybe took the edge off a little bit. But so you guys have been out bigfooting again since then. So now that you've had this experience out on this lake down by the beaver area and stuff, so then what drove you to now go out looking for this creature beyond that?
Well, that was it. To me, now we've had an experience very unique in its own right, and now we're finding other people that are sharing similar things. I guess really it's just to get that perfect, that perfect interaction with it. You get to see it, get a clear picture, none of the stupid stuff. Actually get some decent proof like we had back in '67. So there's some decent proof back then, and I think they did a good job, and I completely believe that footage. And I would love to get something like that, but it's a lot of time in the seat. You got to get out there and do that stuff. You actually got to get out there.
Yeah, it's definitely, you got to spend some time in the woods. That's the only way. You got to put yourself in where you heard other people say that they've had something happen, or you yourself have had something happen.
Yeah,
you got to be in the right place at the right time. Is what you have.
And then once there's a sighting or two in the area, chances are there's a habit. Why is it one or two times? Why is it two times or something like that? So there's a reason, be it bedding, food, breeding, you name it, habitat. Could be any of that. It could be just transitional. You're a transitional spot between bedding and food or water or something like that, and you're just and that's when you saw it. But our stuff now is trying to find an end game, why they would be there, why they would be there, and we all based it off of that New York incident. We were there because we were fishing. We believe they were there because they were fishing. So let's find commonalities of why we would interact with the forest in the same manner. Bigfoot and a person. You got to eat. You're going to travel. You're going to do certain things. Certain geographic areas are going to make it easier to go one way other than the other. Things like that. So you're using a trapper's mind, wilderness guide mind, all that stuff, and you're trying to figure out where it's one dot in a big scope of things. You're going to put a trail camera or a track trap or something that's going to have some long-term commitment out there, and you can go back and get something that might be 3-4 weeks old, might be 6 months old, or these cards that'll shoot you. Some of them will shoot you back your data right on the phone. We have some of those. Some of them you have to go back and retrieve. There's different stuff like that.
Absolutely. So it seems like some of this stuff has obviously worked for you, because you both say that you've had Class A visual sightings of these creatures. So can you tell us about when you saw one, and what was the situation there?
Go ahead. This one. Yeah. We did an expedition back in June of 2016. We did it here at the camp, and we went to there were about 12 to 15 of us, and we went over. It's been raining now for about 4 days, so we turned around and we went on this let's see, we went on the expedition the night before here in the camp,
right?
And we took them out, see if there was anything, because we've had things happen here, but with the rain, it was tough.
The night before, we do trainings with the FLIRs and walkie-talkies and stuff like that. And we do that right here in camp.
Right. So it was just to get them used to it.
Right.
So the following day, we had gone to Savoy State Forest, and we pulled into one spot, and it was raining pretty heavily. So nobody wanted to get out, so we decided to go somewhere else. We went around the mountain and we went to a different spot. And we pulled off the road. It was a dirt road. We pulled off to the side. And like I said, about 12 of us went in, and the rest stayed in the car. They didn't want to get out and get wet. So we turned around and we went in. It was about half mile in, I would say, 3/4 of a mile in. And there were two guys in front of us, father and son. They had a GoPro, and they took off in front of us. And it was better for them to go in front, because instead of having a whole group at one time just charge through it, so they could scan what was in front. As we got in there, two guys fell to the back. They like to watch the group to see if the group is being watched.
Mm-hmm.
So they fell way back, and they're watching the group go in. So we get up to this place called Balance Rock. And there's a big mud puddle in there. And we were looking for prints. We didn't find anything. But we're standing there, we're talking, and then we asked if there was anybody that wanted to make a Bigfoot call. And this young boy said, sure. So he put out a whoop. Right after the whoop happened, the two guys that were behind us came up and says, hey, we just got whistles back here. The father and son up in front of us, he sent his son back, and he says, we got claps or knocks or something. So we're like, oh, wow, okay. So 12 of us just go into the woods. So we're kind of spread out on an angle, like a 40, 45 degree angle. And they're all in there, and everybody just kind of walked in about 40 yards and stood still. And we're looking around, and I have an orange rain jacket. So I stuck out light like a sore thumb, because everybody else is in green, brown, black, blue. So we're looking around, and it's raining, but it's a misty rain, which is just keeping everything quiet. So I'm kind of just looking around, and I'm a hunter, so I says, how can I see something move? So I bent down, and I'm looking, and I'm saying, I don't see anything. But all of a sudden I saw this big black thing, and I said, what is that? So I stood up, and I'm looking at it, and I kind of leaned, and when I leaned like I was trying to get a better look, natural instinct, I guess, I don't know. But all of a sudden this thing leaned with me, and I went, what? And when I stood up, it stood up, and I was like, oh man. And I started going at it, and there was a guy to my right on an angle from me, and there was a guy between us with a GoPro. And when you looked at the GoPro, we came into the same frame from two different angles at the exact same time. He saw it from one angle, I saw it from another. So there were 12 people there that are all of a sudden they're involved in this thing happening. And we ran up to it, and there was a tree laying there, and somebody had said, oh, did you see it? And the guy to my right says, I saw from the waist down, I saw the legs move. And I says, well, I saw from the waist up. I says, I teeter-tottered with this thing. And he goes, oh my God. He says, we had a Bigfoot right here. So we're looking around, we can't find anything. There's the two guys that were behind us are coming through the woods now. They're coming down the road that this thing would have ran out. And it was only like 50 yards, but they didn't see anything. You didn't hear anything. I believe there were three. I think we caught the one in the middle by accident, and it didn't know what to do. But to have that happen with that many people that were witnessing it all at the same time, we were like, oh, this is unbelievable. So we're looking at the GoPro. We can't see anything on the GoPro. So I says, Tim wasn't with me at this time. He was here teaching a fishing class. So when I came back, I said, oh, dude, I said, you got to go with me. I got to show you what happened. I said, it's incredible. So we go up the very next day, and we go walking in, and I says, I was standing here on this rock, and this is what happened. So he walks up. We recreated the whole thing. I brought the rangefinder, tape measure, the whole 9 yards. So I says, I tell you what, I'll tell you when to stop. So he walked up into the woods up to this tree. I range found it at 40 yards. And then he used his hat and he put it on the ruler and he's going up and up and up. It was almost 9 feet tall. When it turned and faced me, it looked like a sheet of plywood is what it looked like. This big, huge sheet of plywood with this, it wasn't a round head, but it was sort of like an oval head, I guess, and then it just went to shoulders. And after that, it was just a big black object standing there. And then it was gone in a flash. So we turned around and we walked up to the tree after we measured all of this. We come around the tree, and as soon as Tim comes around the tree, it was right there. I mean, you could not miss it. It was a beautiful print.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably because we were right to where he had seen it take off. You know, it stood up and then it bolted. And it just happened to be, you know, the first track was, I don't know, it was probably a good piece. I remember it was like 9 or 10 feet from where it was originally.
From where the
seen.
tree was, yep.
And then there was tracks that we cast that were 7 feet apart. So it was a good leap to the first track we cast, and then 7 foot to the third track. Yeah. And that's what we got. So we've got some tracks that are 17 and a half, 17 inches, and 3 inches deep that are, you know, giant. And when I saw these tracks, dude, they were just straight up foot tracks.
Yeah, there was no mistake in it.
In the moss, the pine, you could have asked for a better thing. And go ahead and show.
I wish I had known about the 3D scanners back then.
Well, we didn't, but this is the cast we took.
Yeah.
And it was, you know.
Where is it? It's hard to. There we go.
There's the heel right here.
Yeah.
The heel. And step. You got your toes going up and then through here, and then it's coming back. So, I mean, it's right there. It's, you know, unfortunately, it's your typical cast. It's not perfect as we thought.
Perfect.
But, you know, when we were looking at it, it's like, oh my God, this is absolutely, you know, blah, blah, blah. But this year at least comes with a heel strike of about 3 inches deep, at least. And the second one we took, this is the second one. Basically, the front of the tracks are here. Yeah. All right. That's where the toes would have been. And the toes were actually up on a root of a tree. Yeah. So when we took the cast, you know, it had come to the edge of the tree. It really is basically the push-off portion of the track.
Right.
Is what that is.
The ball of the foot caught the root and it just kind of slid
pushed off it.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a 7 foot span from that big track to that little track.
And the reason why we took the little track is simply because it shows you something the same weight made a dent in the ground that was the same weight or the same size as this one 7 feet behind it. So it was, you know, it's ambiguous to look at it unless you know the story and we're there, but that's the deal. And that's why we took that second cast as well. I mean,
but the story hasn't ended there.
No.
We actually turned around and we had no casting material at all.
Right.
And we were like, oh, you got to be kidding. So we called a friend of ours and we says, hey, come. We said, come on up. I says, you won't believe this. I says, there's an actual track. The guy I saw it with, I said, there's a track. And he goes, no, sir. I says, I'm telling you, there's a track. I says, I wouldn't lie to you. So he turns around, he grabs all of his stuff and he comes up, he drives up. We're a good hour and a half away from where he was. He drove in. So we waited for him on the dirt road.
It's like a trailhead.
Right. It's a trailhead. We waited for him on the dirt road. He shows up. We get into his truck. I'm on the passenger side. Tim's behind me.
In the back in the cab.
We're driving in. We're driving back down the dirt road. We couldn't have been 50 yards in. And this scream, yell, growl from the top of the mountain.
Just like New York.
It was absolutely, it was definitely a warning sign because
that's what it seemed like,
it wasn't there when we came out, but it was doing it when we went back in. Yeah. And it was so loud, it was unbelievable. And I said, Tim, did you just hear that? And he goes, yeah. And I asked the guy my buddy John, I said, did you see it or did you hear it? And he goes, I heard something, but he's on the other side.
Plus he had the radio.
So we said, all right. I said, come on, we got to go in there. And here we are going
This
in
thing's
there.
yelling at us on one end of the mountain, and we're driving the other to go and make a cast. What potentially is yelling at us?
It was crazy, but we did. We went in there, and we made that cast. And while we're making the big one, that's when we noticed the other one 7 feet away. It was like, oh man, you got to be kidding me.
But there's a dozen people.
But there were a dozen people that saw that happen.
Or
yeah, we had whistles, and we had possible knocks or claps up in front.
Yeah.
So with 12 people hearing what was going on, and then we had that happen.
2 witnesses to see it actually.
Yeah.
And then we went back and got cast the very next day, in which that part I took part in, and then we saw, or the screaming and the yelling, and then we went up and casted this thing. And so that was just that was 2016. It was a very, very cool expedition that we had.
Yeah, it was really
and
cool.
We'd been doing, expeditions for a number of years, and we'd been very lucky because first off, we do them in the fall in New England because we believe that it's harvest time, and from summer to fall or the beginning of winter, you can pretty much find something to eat out there. And
as long as you put your time in the woods, like he's saying, using the fall, because that's what we do. That's the way we look at it.
Yeah.
That's when most
Fall
of
harvest.
the times you're going to see them.
Yeah. There's tons of pumpkin, squash, you name it, whatever didn't get, planted or picked or
Exactly.
Rotted off the vine or didn't fully get to whatever, or, a lot of farmers will leave a percentage on the edge for the deer and the bears to go in and wreck and stuff like that. That's an acceptable loss, because it's wildlife. We're going to do it. So, I mean, it's out there. So the potential for eating that kind of stuff is there.
Plenty of pickings during the falls, and they love it.
That's just one aspect of their diet, I think. I think it's an omnivore. I believe it'll sit in your trash can and eat everything from the Dunkin' Donut coffee grinds to the trash can lid itself, like a bear.
Yeah.
Just like that. But then on the other hand, I think it's like our moose. Our moose up here in Massachusetts or in New England, they make a living on bark and buds and some grasses. And that's it. They don't chase down deer. They don't do any of that. They get to 1,200 pounds, grow a rack, a ginormous full-size rack, and drop it every single year. And the racks aren't really developed by, eating grains and things like that. They're getting their minerals from grasses and barks and buds and things like that. So that's the natural forage. And I believe because of our diverse forest systems up here in New England, you'll have not old growth, but you'll have stuff. We log in phases, different properties, different stages of logging from fresh clear cut to almost where, 60, 70 years later, you're cutting an oak grove of 150. We do it here at this camp. We have a forestry plan, and there's, a succession that we follow. And now you take that on a large scale forest, connecting Greenland, let's say large tracts of greenways connected, state forests, state parks, private properties, that stuff like that. So you start to see what I mean with that,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. One of the things that bothers me the most about, people saying these things can't exist is because of the size. There's no way that the woods and stuff could support something of this size. And, you said it yourself, you have these huge moose, you have huge grizzly bears, you have huge polar bears, elephants, you have all these animals that we know exist. And to say that something of this size couldn't exist because of the diet or the food sources is completely preposterous, I believe. It's amazing.
I know here
they eat anything and everything.
Yeah, we hunted a lot on this property, and one year we did too much hunting, and we had a deficit, and we noticed the deficit because we didn't manage that. Actually, we had some poaching involved with that too, but that was managed later on, and now we've got that under control, and you could see a difference in the deer health, deer herd, deer size, things like that.
But it
I
just
think-
shows you that if they kill them all off, they ain't staying.
Yeah, you're not going to have a habitual kind of a situation where it's going to live in an area because it's going to eat all your deer. It's,
Whatever
what
it
I
can
mean?
get,
They're not that plentiful, at least not out here. Our hunting season wasn't all that great. And there's tons of other reasons, disease that goes through herds and stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. But, I just think that the forest provides, and the forest will provide for a Bigfoot as much as it does for every other one of those critters out there.
Right.
And that's what it makes a living on. I think it'd sit there and, I've watched moose up here in our back property eat green stripe maple. And they love this stuff. It's probably a good mineral for them in the end. And it's probably a good, sustain them over the winter and stuff like that. That's their winter food. They'll strip the bark off of trees, and it's these green stripe maples, beeches, things like that. That'll have a decent cambium layer that's going to offer some minerals, proteins, something that's going to carbohydrates. It's going to give them all those little things that they need to survive through a winter. So I can see a Bigfoot, gnawing on a tree, chunking down a beech log or something.
Very possible.
More so than chasing down a deer where you have to chase and expend energy.
I think you're right. They're very opportunist, very omnivore creatures, and people wonder, if they're migratory or move through an area. And I think that they move around, but not so much for migration, but more just to follow the food source. You have more the less berries, the less mushrooms and stuff, obviously in the winter. So they're going to have to move to more the deer and the fish and the other things that they can catch and hunt, as opposed to the vegetation and stuff. So I think that the food source is definitely a big part of why and where they are.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, I'd even go another, to step out on a limb and say that they hibernate for short periods. A lot of our mammals do this. Squirrels,
do it.
raccoons, possums, porcupines. They'll shut down for a couple of weeks. They'll den up and do all that stuff. If it's really terrible, you're not going to see them. If it's good, they'll pop their head out and come walking around. We've seen bear tracks early. They'll come out, move around, do this, back in, den up, and sleep for another 2-3 weeks. Why couldn't a Bigfoot do that? If it's already happening in the natural population, I'm not going to say that it can't be done in a Bigfoot world, because it's already happening. We had an issue, not an issue. We had an incident here, an encounter with a hunter and a Bigfoot, and the hunter was telling me that he was hearing an owl. That was a very, very low tone, great horned owl with very low tone, and it was just not an owl. It was not your typical, it wasn't that. It was a lower tone. I'm not going to know. I'm sure he knows what the owl. He's a neighbor on the other side, so I know he's heard the same things that I've heard, and he said this was different, and we went in the following day after he told me that he was hearing. So I guess where I was going with this is it was mimicking. So they have the ability to mimic something. Could be turkeys, could be any number of different things to bring in something to potentially
hide
mate.
itself.
Bring in a turkey and it's calling, acting like another turkey. It's just calling them in. And wax them with a rock or something. Yeah, it's potential. I don't know if I give them that much smarts, but I think a symbiotic relationship, a natural thing, would be more like a coyote kill, right? A coyote kill. Now they set off a certain bark and a certain tone, and it's like, oh, that's drive through. I'm just going to run over there and grab their stuff, right? So if the coyotes are projecting with the triumph that they always do after they get a kill, barking and yelping, and that's kind of scary in its own right. Bigfoot will hear it, and it's a potential food buzzer for him. But maybe.
And he's not afraid to go in and take it from them either.
Could be as natural as the turkey vultures or other things that are up there, and it's we could see it as a potential sign. Maybe they can see it as a potential sign. Hunters, they'll equate a shot, and there's been numerous accounts of a hunter losing a deer killed. potential Bigfoot, or they've seen it, went to see it, they've made reports.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah, they made the reports. So, it's all
There has
possible.
been, there actually has been reports out there. Matter of fact, if on couple, I think one of the shows that was out there, they were talking to a hunter that actually saw it while he was doing that.
Yeah.
He was hunting, saw it. I don't know if he had shot a deer and he watched it come up, or if it was already there when he looked up through his scope. Oh yeah, it's been seen many a times doing that.
Well,
Following a
get
shot,
reported.
putting two and two together. Makes sense, you know. I mean, even an animal has instincts, you know.
We try to, you try to create patterns out in the woods. So is he going to show up at the same time, or is he going to, at a food lot, or, this, that, or you try to see what a pattern you can create, and or if there's a pattern, if it's just all nonsense or something. But our pattern seems to be that there's more reports and more sightings in the fall and in the summer, not so much in the winter. We don't get the large trackways and things like that. I wish we did, but we hadn't really seen them. I haven't really seen them.
To find one.
Yeah, so that's why I think they're more they hibernate more, because years ago we didn't have that many people using the woods. You had hunters, there were a few snowmobilers that were out there. And that was about it, let's even go back into the 70s. And then, you go to the 70s, 80s, and you start to get a recreational buildup. And now it's a multi-billion-dollar,
business.
recreation is huge. So it just means there's more users out in the woods, which means there's more opportunity to be found. There's people climbing, in places you don't normally go because it's ice, and you're in these back crevices on a north-facing shadow of a mountain, and no one ever goes there because it's steep and cold, and guess what? That might be where Bigfoot's checking in, but that's where people are going to now. There's more adventure. There's more risk takers. There's, snowmobilers. When we have the snow, they're going out in places that
we've yet to hear of anybody actually running into,
and we know a few guys with snowmobiles.
I know guys that actually groom miles and miles of trails, over mountaintops, and it's like
looking for tracks.
And they're grooming the trails, looking for the tracks. And they've yet to find anything, and they've been doing it for years. Being in the right place at the right time, but for sure.
Well, I think it's very hard to find the tracks. Like you said, with yours, you have 7 feet apart. So the chances of you finding that 1 foot out of 14 feet of space, there's one footprint in there. It's not like, any other animal that you're tracking that's a lot smaller, or human footprints that are one right after the other. It's very hard to find those lone footprints within that space.
Fortunately, there was nothing beyond that 7-foot footprint. There was no other print.
We've cast several, but that's all we've really managed. The most tracks we counted were 6, and that was in a sighting in October Mountain. And we saw 6 tracks, but they were one came out fairly decent that we cast. But that was the only time we had seen semi sort of a trackway where there was succession of prints, and you could see it, but we took casts, and it was in a swamp. There was a lot of high grass, so you really couldn't see the track itself and that stuff.
That was actually another Class A sighting. That was that we had.
That was this track here came from it. It's a
we run another expedition with about 12, 15 people.
You can see here
that's right.
Those are the toes. Those are the toes that are gripping into the hill. Here's the heel on the bottom. You can
it's hard
see
to do it in that.
You can see there. Yep.
Yeah, I'm level here, and you can see how the toes are kind of wonky going downhill. Well, that's because this track was cast. Look at it. I mean, you can see the toes in there. It's kind of it's there. That was a track that was a 2000. It was September 24, 2018. We engraved it the day we took the cast. It was after an expedition. It was a BFRO expedition. We had 12 people on this one. There was we were at Felton Pond in October Mountain State Forest. October Mountain State Forest is one of the places that we continue to research and have been for many, many years.
Oh, yes.
And that's why we go to these places, because we've had numerous other things happen of lesser, knocks, tree pushes, things like rocks
thrown at us while we were fishing.
Yeah, stuff. Yeah,
You gotta
and that's
stop
exactly right. So if a honey hole, a fishing hole that's working, why go someplace else? Everybody gets bored with their spot. You think you need to leave and go fish somewhere else. Dude, just chill. It'll come.
Yeah.
It was there for a reason. It'll come back. And so you just need to be patient. And October Mountain is one of our areas. It's a public state forest.
Yep.
Anybody can come and go. But a Bigfoot that lives in that area would know that, right?
Mhm.
So it would know the patterns of the people that would interact with the pond, how they get there, this or that. There's a couple trail systems
Right.
in which the Appalachian Trail goes through. So there's patterns, north, south on the Appalachian Trail. There's patterns from the parking lots people will use, so they would know where to go, how to avoid, and things like that. Unless it was being casual and didn't think it was an issue. And all of a sudden, that's when a person sees them, put their guard down or whatever, and next thing you know, poof, there it is. That's when you have an encounter or a sighting.
The October Mountain sighting was, we went up at night. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
It was misty rain. And there were about 6 people standing up along the shoreline. A couple of people standing behind them. They were looking towards the dam that was there. And there were some people sitting over on this picnic table. And a couple of minutes went by, and somebody says, "Hey, do you see that?" And they're looking through the FLIRs. And so they're watching this thing walk back and forth. We nicknamed it the Pacer, because it would walk up through the FLIR. You can see this walking up, and then it would walk back. So they're watching this, and it just went on for
half a dozen of us watching.
Yeah, it went on for, I don't know, 5 minutes or so, and they're back and forth, back and forth. And a friend of ours, Chuck, turned around. He was talking, a friend of ours, Dave McCullough, was there, and Tim and I, and he says, "Hey, do you smell that?" And you got this whiff of I called it a musky smell. And it was really, I mean, you knew it. As soon as you breathed it in, you were like, "Oh man, I've never smelled that before." And then the guys that were behind me over at the picnic table, all of a sudden they kind of perked up and says, "Hey, what's that?" Yeah. At that time, they're still looking at this thing pacing back and forth. And I meet myself or somebody else says, "Hey, did anybody take a picture of this thing?" And they're like, "Oh, wait a minute." So we ended up with a few seconds.
It's like buck fever.
A few seconds. Yeah, it's like buck fever. Yeah, but everybody got a chance to see this thing go back and forth, and it was so. All of a sudden, it just walked off, and it was gone.
Disappeared into the woods.
And as it went out, all of a sudden, about a couple seconds go by. At treetop level, we see this glowing light blue ball. And we're all just kind of looking at this. We're in the middle of the woods. There's no light pole or no nothing.
This thing just popped out.
It just popped out of nowhere. But there wasn't light coming off of it. It was all on the inside. And we're all just standing there just kind of looking at it going, "What?" And we all of a sudden just started moving. And then it just gone.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah, it was a pine tree at the end of this peninsula.
the truth.
100-foot pine tree. And it shows up halfway up this
Yeah.
pine tree. And it's probably the size of a beach ball, maybe bigger. It's crystal bluish, like almost like that icon you have on yours, almost like that. And it was large, but it didn't have like you said, it didn't emit light. It was just, it was
just a ball.
blue.
Everything was inside.
It was that color, but it didn't emit it. There was no glowing on the branches or anything. You couldn't see through it. It was just there. And it went from halfway up that tree to the top, and then slowly across and gone. And there was a dozen people that witnessed it. So
Yeah.
that was the beauty of it. All of us just picking up our jaws, watching what the heck. We're watching this. We called it the pacing Bigfoot because it was going back and forth. Now we go back a day later. The expedition's over.
Again, we went back to investigate what we
Finish
just
up.
saw.
There was something out there. Let's go find out
Yeah.
what we were looking at. Whatever. And sure enough, we end up finding a half a dozen tracks during this time, and they were all junk, cast wise. And we got the one I just showed you with the toes in it, and the toes, like
That was the best one.
this one here, like I said, was the very last one we took, and we took it. You could see the
Yeah, it was actually going up a slight
it was up
incline.
a slope. You could see the slope, and it was
And that's
curling
why
its toes.
That's why it came out really good the way it did.
And
But that was the best out of all of them.
yeah, so you could see it was flexing. I guess is the best part about this is you could see the heel, the big dip, and then this flexing and the toes, and it's right there. Do I wish it was better and have all the cool, definitive thermal ridges? Beautiful, but that ain't the case. This is what we got after the story. Put it in context. I believe that's a Bigfoot track. And I believe we saw Bigfoot that night through the thermals, through the flares rather. But that was our basically the one up there in the October Mountain with this other track.
Yeah, that was the other sighting.
And there's, like I said, a dozen people that watched. So
Yeah.
it's kind of bizarre with the orb thing. You throw in the orb and it's like, whew, now where do we go? So
I don't know. I one of our first expeditions for bigfooting in Upper Michigan, I actually saw very similar to what you saw, the blue orb. Mine was about the size of a basketball, I would say. So I'm glad that you pointed out how big yours was, because I was going to ask you how big you thought it was. But so mine was not as big. It went straight through the woods, and I actually got it on thermal imager. It didn't show up on any camera, did not catch it, but we got it on thermal, and it just looks like a circle, like an outline. It's not hot. It's not cold. It's just this circle that moves across the screen. So, no.
Just did that, and I'm thinking in my head, the night before I saw mine, my Bigfoot, I was standing in an open field with a guy and his young son, and his young son had the thermal. He was watching a mouse. You just said you got it on the thermal. I never thought of that until just now.
Oh, to clear it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but we stood there and we're looking about, I don't know, 100 yards away, and I know this camp. There's nothing there. It's an open field. There's no electricity, no light, no buildings.
Woods, just woods.
And we're standing there, and there's this a yellow ball about the size of a basketball, beach ball. And I looked over at him. He looked back at me, and we're both looking at this. And we just watched it just sit there for a couple seconds, and then it just gone. We're like, we never said anything, but we just looked at each other. And now you say the thermal. He's like, oh, I was right there. I never thought of it. Only because I took him by surprise. It just popped up out of nowhere.
And that's why
this
six
this
guys
field
didn't
is
get the
pitch
clear
black.
footage of the Bigfoot Basin. Is you're just enthralled with it, and all of a sudden, somebody verbally says, "Hey, somebody get a picture." Click.
Yeah. And if you've ever been in the woods where there's no light at all, you know how dark it is. And this light just popped up out of nowhere. It was like, what? Where'd that come from?
Yeah.
And then we just watched it take off. But I never thought of the flare until just now. I won't let that happen a second time.
Absolutely. We've
you know,
learned from being out there and losing some footage or camera malfunctions or something. We all have cameras on, multiple cameras filming at any time between GoPro, night vision, thermal. There's at least 3 to 7 cameras rolling on any time that we're out in the woods. So things you can't take it for granted.
Now we've had recorders die with brand new batteries, going out with them right from shutting the door to to hopefully get a road knock response from shutting the door. Right from that point, getting out of the truck with it on and walking halfway up, having an experience, and this thing is dead. It's not
Brand new batteries out of the package. Good date on it and everything. It was like, who knows? We tested it. It worked. Got out of the truck. Didn't
But
work.
having multiples and multiples is the good
It was
thing.
crazy. But yeah, usually it's just Tim and I,
Mhm.
you know, when we're out there.
Unless we're doing an
Unless we're,
expedition.
yeah,
and
we're
then,
like,
then it's, people got all kinds of gear and stuff. But it's, Monday through Friday, it's just, him and I. That's what we've got.
Absolutely, guys. All right. Well, we are at the end of the show for this week. So, if you guys, where can people find you? Do you guys have a YouTube? You have a website? Where can people get a hold of you and go out on expeditions with you guys?
Find us we have a Facebook page. It's the Vogel Brothers. Just type in the Vogel Brothers. You'll come to the page, like us, and you'll stay up to date with whatever we're doing. And we offer a lot of different things in the Bigfoot world, but it's mostly for research, for people to get together, share ideas, what they're doing, see if it works for you, see if it works for me.
right.
Like the cameras and different things like that. It's mostly just share ideas, kind of network. Let's find this thing.
I do my best to keep it updated. Just bear with me.
Awesome. That's all you can do. There's so much social media and so much all this out there. It's hard to keep it all straight. I understand.
I'm getting
This
there.
is the Facebook page works. There's plenty of people listening and following. It's a good way to if you want to find out what we're doing or what we're going to be doing. Check out the Vogel Brothers. Smash the button.
Absolutely, guys. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on this week. Hopefully you guys stay safe out there. Enjoy your ice storm, and hope you get some more evidence soon, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks.
Have a good day.
Take care, man. All right, guys, that is our show for this week. We have a lot of cool stuff coming up here. Coming up next week, we have Ryan Edwards on the show. He has a brand new book out on prehistoric creatures and megafauna and Bigfoot. And we have a pre-recorded show coming up next week with him. And in 2 weeks, guys, it is the 50th episode of Monsters on the Edge here on the Untold Radio Network. Super excited for that. And hopefully we don't let you down here, because we have Ron Moorhead on the show in 2 weeks, and he's coming on to talk about his brand new book as well. So next week, Ryan Edwards, and after that, Ron Moorhead. And coming up, April 4th, I have a brand new show coming out every Thursday on the Untold Radio Network. It is all paranormal and aliens and everything on the paranormal spectrum. That's awesome. I hope that you guys come and check that out. If you're interested in anything other than the cryptids and creatures and stuff, that is going to be something that you're going to want to check out, because if it doesn't have fur or fuzz or scales, we're going to be talking about it on over there. So until next time, guys, until next week, I'll see you on the edge.